This video is going to be all about reference tracks. But we are not just going to be talking about the theory alone. We're also going to be diving into the practical aspects of how to find the best references and how to use these reference tracks to improve our mixes. Alright, so now let's start at the foundation. What exactly is a reference track? A reference track is a professionally mixed and mastered song that you use as a sonic benchmark when working on your own music. In simpler terms, it's just a professional song that you play alongside your own work-in-progress mix. And this helps you evaluate and guide your decisions on balance, tonal frequency, and clarity. And I just have to state this that you are not trying to copy the song, you are not stealing anything, all you're just doing is using it as a sonic compass. That is, you're studying how it sounds, how it feels, and you're asking yourself, why does this sound like that and mine sound like this? Alright, so now you might be asking yourself, okay, why does this matter so much? What impact does it have on my mix in general? And there are a few major reasons why we actually use reference tracks and why it actually helps us get better at mixing. Number one, ear fatigue. When you're working on a session for 3, 4, 5 hours, your ears can start to deceive you, and the possibility of you making a bad decision increases. A reference track helps here by snapping you back to reality, because you are now comparing your work with something that was made objectively well. Number two, frequency balancing. A reference track shows you where the pro mix is sitting across the frequency spectrum. Is the low end bigger? Is there more air in the highs? These are things that you can see on a spectrum analyzer and also hear with trained ears. And comparing these two side by side, your mix and the pro mix using a spectrum analyzer actually shows you a whole lot of information. Number three, translation. A professional master track already sounds great on every system, from phone speakers to AirPods to studio monitors to Bluetooth speakers to car speakers. It already sounds great everywhere. And when you compare your mix to that, if your mix doesn't translate across every system, well, there is some information in that reference track that you should act on. Number four, genre education. Now, these three that we've gone ahead above are one of the three major reasons why we use reference tracks. But let's say, for example, you want to experiment in a new genre of music that you are not used to. Getting a reference track in that particular genre can be of significant help, because every genre has a sonic fingerprint. Hip-hop sounds different from R&B. Afrobeat sounds different from pop. Church music and gospel music has its own DNA. Using a reference track from a particular genre trains your ears to understand what the standard sounds like in that space, so your mix fits the culture. Alright, so now I believe you are sold on using reference tracks. But which reference track do you pick? And how do you go about selecting them? What most people will do, which is the easiest and simplest way, will be to select a reference track in the same genre that they are working on. If you're mixing a trap beat, reference a trap song, not a pop song. If you're mixing gospel rap, find a gospel rap reference. The closer the genre, the more useful the comparison. Or they can go for a similar vibe. If your track is dark and cinematic, don't reference something bright and club ready. The tone needs to match the feeling that you are going for. Now, all these are valid options that actually do work. But I found out that, okay, let's say you're trying to get better at, mixing and making music, and you want to use reference tracks as a tool to help with that. One of the best ways to get the maximum use of a reference track is to get a reference track that sounds as close to your track or as similar to your track that you're working on, as close to it as possible. So you have a very, very close comparison between how the reference track sounds and feels and how your own track sounds and feels. So here's the catch. Instead of first of all making a beat and then going to find a reference, which most of us do, all right, you actually first of all walk backwards. And that means finding the reference track first of all, and then make your own beat around that space. Like I said, this works best if you're trying to, get better at mixing, making music, sound selection, and even arrangement. Because at this point, you can now study how the song works. You can really dissect it and now study exactly what works for the music. You can study the mixing. How does it sit in the mix? How does the low end sound? So it acts like a goal that you can, work towards. And that target now guides your decision throughout the whole music production process. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the door and see how we can use these reference tracks and how to actually maximize the use of them when making and mixing our music. All right, so guys, let's say we have our track as this. Okay, and then we have our reference track as this. Now, the first thing I can notice by just briefly hearing it is that the low end on the reference is way more richer and fuller than the low end on the track that we have going on. Even without the bass, okay, because the bass came in around, I think around here. Okay, so with the bass, you can see that it now became actually more full. All right, but our low end over here, there is a bass playing, but it's not just as prominent and as impactful as the reference. So this is without the bass, and this is with the bass. Okay, all right, but I want it to be not exactly, but a bit similar to what we have going on right here. So first things first, when we have our reference like this, most of the time what I like to do is I like to separate them into their individual tracks. Okay, so just use the FL Studio's extract stem from sample, and FL Studios does the work for you. All right, so once that is done and settled, you can see that it's broken them down into 4 different stems. We have the drums, we have the bass, we have the instrument, and then we have the vocals. Since there isn't any vocal in this track, it's basically almost empty. And this makes it easier, most especially if you are going to be making your beat starting out with the reference. Okay, like we've gone over earlier, you can get the reference at first, or you can get the reference while you are maybe done mixing and just want to, reference something. So this is more helpful when you are starting out because you can now critically listen to how the drum works. And then you can now actually study and hear the details of that particular instrument. We're going to go ahead and route all this to a channel on the mixer. From here, what you want to do is actually very, very simple. Okay, you want to unroute this from the master because sometimes when it's on the master, you might have some extra effect, and you don't want it to go through that process of interfering with the reference. All right, so you just simply just unroute this from the master, but once you do this, notice that no sound comes through, okay? But we want to hear something. And now if I click on the master and you look over here at the bottom right, okay, you can see that we have out 1 to out 2. But on every other insert in the mix, you can see that there is none there. Okay, so what you just need to do is go to your reference insert right here and change it to out 1, out 2. And then just like that, you have sound coming out of that particular track without being routed through the master track. It's a very, very, very useful tool. Okay, and then we're going to be using a free tool to analyze our track, and it is called Span. All right, so this is the tool right here. So you just go ahead and play your track, and then you read this spectrum analyzer going on right here. Okay, now you can see that it has a kind of full low end, and the high ends are kind of not that loud. Okay, you can see the shape it's having right here. And then when the bass came in, the low end became more full actually. So now let's go ahead to our own track, and then let's see how our track is compared to that. So you can see we have a bit of low end missing around this portion, most especially. It's really, really low. Alright, you can see right here, there is just this missing space in the low end, and also the mids, the high mids are also a bit too loud. Okay, but I'm not sure I have an issue with that. Okay, I just have an issue with low end being not as prominent as I want it to. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead first of all increase this a bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and look into. Okay, so you can see right here it's losing a bit, so I'm going to go into this and then just take this up. As much as you're referencing, you don't want it to be like we said, you're not trying to copy the track. Okay, you're just using it as like an anchor point, like a guideline. Okay, so you're not just going to be going one for one or trying to get it to look exactly like how the reference looked like, because you still have to still use your ears and then make sure it still sounds good regardless of how it looks. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this up, not too much. Now it's way too much, okay? You don't want it to be too much, just find a good spot to fit it in. Okay, I think this sounds way better. All right, I can like we notice the high end it's a bit lower on the reference, but I think I'm fine with that, even though it is lower on the reference. All right, so this is just one way to use this free span tool to go over your reference. But there is a different way, and that is using this tool right here, the tonal balance control. This gives you way more details into what is actually going on in that reference track. And the best way to use this tool is to actually load up your reference in the tool for this plugin to analyze your reference. Okay, so to do that, you just go over right here. You can say create target from audio file. So you select that and then you go ahead and load in your reference. So you can see it has gone ahead and analyzed our reference. Now from here, I just like to go ahead and check out the fine option. Then now if we go back and play our track, we would see the level of how our own looks compared to the reference. And so now you can now look ahead and you can actually see the major difference in between how your sound goes and how the reference goes. So you can see over here in the mids, we are going a bit low and our highs are a bit high. So over here, you can now go into your track and now start making adjustments. So to fix that, I can probably just go ahead and increase the pads. But like I said earlier, it doesn't have to, technically fit in one-to-one, most especially if you've listened to your track and then you notice that, okay, it's not having any issues, you've tried it on different systems and it's going fine. This is just like a guideline for you to, see what is actually going on in between the tracks and for you to now use it as a reference for your own track.